My name is Raphael Gege. This presentation is about human immunity, and the following topics will be covered. The first and second lines of defense in a human body, the third line of defense, the roles of the different types of immune cells and immunoglobulins, self-recognition and tolerance to own tissues, and rejection of transplanted organs. Specific immune system disorders such as type 1 diabetes and vasculitis, the categories of acquired immunity including natural, artificial, passive, and active immunity, the immune response to vaccination including immunological memory, the concept of herd immunity, vaccination programs, and the factors affecting vaccine uptake. And finally, an evaluation of the benefits of vaccination. To have a good understanding of this presentation, the difference between infection and disease have to be understood. An infection occurs when bacteria, viruses, or other microbes enter the body and begin to multiply with intention to cause harm. The disease occurs when the cells in the body are damaged as a result of the infection. At this stage, signs and symptoms of an illness begin to appear. The body's protective mechanism, known as the immune system, goes to work anytime it acknowledges the presence of an intruder. The immune system is divided into different types of defense systems, namely the first, second, and third lines of defense. The first and second are known as non-specific line of defense because they do not target any particular pathogen. Non-specific protective mechanisms repel all microorganisms equally. The first line of defense is divided into two categories. These are the physical and chemical barriers. The skin, which covers almost all parts of the body, is an example of the physical barrier that prevents many pathogens from entering the body. The hair and the nose act as a physical barrier to infection. Hair-like structures in the trachea called cilia help to move mucus and pathogens towards the throat, where it is swallowed into the stomach. Goblet cells in our airways are known to create mucus that trap pathogens. Mucus production in our airways is also a physical barrier. Examples of chemical barriers are tears produced in the eyes, which contain enzymes that act as chemical barriers. Hydrochloric acid produced in the stomach, which is also a chemical barrier, is strong enough to kill any pathogens that have been caught in the mucus, in the airways, or consumed in food or water. The second line of defense is when pathogens successfully cross the physical barrier. This line of defense is also non-specific resistance and destroys invaders in a generalized way without targeting specific pathogens. It involves immune cells and proteins that recognize and eliminate any pathogen that enters the body through the process of phagocytosis, which means cell eating. There are two types of phagocytes that carry out this process. They are macrophages and neutrophils. An example is when bacteria is transferred into the skin when penetrated by contaminated pin. Blood vessels near the injured area dilate and become more permeable. This allows macrophages to leave the bloodstream and enter the damaged tissues in search of pathogens. Macrophages are cells derived from a type of white blood cells called monocytes. Neutrophils are the most abundant white blood cell and are the first cells to arrive at the site of the inflammation or infection. When an invader is identified, the phagocyte approaches the microbe. It engulfs the microbe and takes it into the cell in a vesicle. It merges the vesicle with a lysosome containing digestive enzymes that breaks down the microbe and uses up the available nutrients. The phagocytes make protein markers and they enter the vesicle. The indigestible material and antigenic fragments within the vesicle are finally removed by a process called exocytosis. The antigenic fragments bind to the protein marker and it is displayed on the surface of the plasma membrane. Interleukin-1 is then secreted, which activates the T cells to secrete interleukin-2. Inflammatory response produces swelling, redness, heat, and pain. This attracts small white blood cells to the area where microbes have invaded. Fever hinders bacterial growth and speeds up tissue repair during an infection. The third line of defense targets specific pathogens that have been encountered by the immune system previously, either through adaptive or acquired means. The immune response occurs throughout the whole body instead of being restricted to the site of infection. Acquired immunity is not present at birth. It is tailored to attack specific antigens because it remembers them. A pathogen is a living or non-living substance that is recognized as foreign agent by the immune system and activates an immune response. Examples are bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoans. The antigen is the part of the pathogen that notifies the body that it is being attacked. There are 5 main types of immune cells, namely neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. These white blood cells are also known as leukocytes. Neutrophils make up between 40 to 60% of the white blood cells and are known for their defense against bacterial and fungal infections. Monocytes' role is against bacterial infections. Eosinophils help to combat parasitic infections. Basophils respond to allergens, and lymphocytes protect the body against viral infection. The immune system creates Y-shaped antibodies, also known as immunoglobulins, that are specific to that antigen. Each antibody has a unique binding shape that locks onto a specific antigen and destroys it. Toxins produced by bacteria from diseases such as tetanus are also destroyed by chemicals produced by white blood cells. After the body's first encounter with the disease, the memory cells remember the microbe which caused the disease and quickly reproduce the right antibody. If an individual is exposed to that infection again, this prevents severe symptoms of the disease from reoccurring. Self-recognition is the ability of the immune system to recognize its own cells and distinguish between foreign organisms and agents. Cells are covered with unique proteins known as MHC, major histocompatibility complex. Only identical twins have the same MHC. The body identifies any cell without the same MHC as foreign. The immune system will switch to defense mode and attack any foreign body with a different MHC. The intensity of the defense is higher when the MHC is not human. When an organ is received by someone through surgery transplant, the immune system recognizes the received organ as foreign. This is because the antigens on the cells of the organ are different. When the organs are not matched closely enough, a blood transfusion reaction can be triggered, and this can lead to the rejection of the new organ. To prevent this from happening, doctors have to match the organ donor and the organ receiver for similarities in the antigens. The more similar the antigens, the less chance the organ will be rejected. Immune system disorders, which are also known as autoimmune diseases, are as a result of the body's immune system attacking the body. There's no real explanation for why this happens, but research shows that there are over 100 known autoimmune diseases. 2 of these diseases are the type 1 diabetes and vasculitis. Type 1 diabetes is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects the pancreas and prevents it from making insulin. This disease requires daily monitoring of blood sugar and the management with insulin injections. It affects both children and adults. Some of the symptoms include excessive thirst and hunger, blurred vision, fatigue, frequent urination, and vaginal yeast infection. Vascularitis is the inflammation of the body's blood vessels. It can affect the small, medium, and large blood vessels. The vessels can become so thin that they rupture, resulting in bleeding into the tissue, or so narrow and cut off the blood circulation. This is known as occlusion. Some of the symptoms include fatigue, fever, abdominal pains, kidney, and nerve problems. Acquired immunity can be either natural or artificial in nature. Both natural and artificial have passive and active components. Active immunity results from an infection or immunization, while passive immunity comes from naturally or artificially gaining antibodies. An example of natural active immunity is fighting off a cold. An example of artificial active immunity is building resistance to a disease due to immunization. An allergic reaction is an extreme response to an antigen, resulting from active immunity. Active immunity requires exposure to a pathogen, which leads to production of antibodies. With passive immunity, the body does not make any antibodies due to the presence of antigens. The antibodies are administered from outside the organism. Antibodies received by babies through the mother's breast milk is an example of natural passive immunity. An example of artificial passive immunity is the injection of a snake's antivenom after a bite. Passive immunity response to an intruder is immediate. It does not require exposure to an antigen for it to build its defense. The limitation is that it is only effective for a few days. Vaccination is the process of administering tiny amounts of dead or weakened viruses or bacteria into the body. Some vaccines contain modified toxins produced by bacteria. This is done to generate antibodies for specific antigens that will help the body combat a specific disease if an individual ever contracts a disease in the future. Most vaccines injected into the body, and some are given orally. The body's first contact with this pathogen is known as primary response. At this stage, the body acknowledges the presence of the antigen and the symptoms. It takes some time for the right antigens to be created the first time. This leads to memory cells being created so the pathogen can be recognized immediately if it ever shows up again. The secondary response will be faster and more antibodies will be produced because the body now has blueprints to work with. The ability of the immune system to do this is known as immunological memory. Herd immunity is when a high percentage of the population is vaccinated, making it very difficult for specific infectious diseases to spread. Measles is an example of a disease that can be controlled when a large part of the population is vaccinated, because the spread of the disease is now limited and confined to just that location. Herd immunity is only effective when a major part of the population is vaccinated. It is very important because some people rely on herd immunity for protection and because they cannot receive vaccines safely. Example of these people are newborn babies who are too young to be vaccinated, elderly people, HIV patients, and people undergoing chemotherapy whose immune system are weakened. However, herd immunity has no influence over certain infections such as tetanus because it is not contagious. The main factor affecting vaccine uptake presently is the number of people questioning the immediate and long-term side effects of these vaccines. Pew Research indicates that as much as 50% of the Black African and Black Caribbean groups in the United Kingdom showed their unwillingness to take the COVID-19 vaccine due to lack of belief in the vaccine. Some people believe that enough research was not done for it to be given to people. Many just refused it because of their religious and cultural beliefs. Vaccination is one of the most successful public health interventions in reducing disease spread, preventing complications and deaths. Although the benefits of getting vaccinated may not be immediately obvious, the long-term benefits cannot be overemphasized. The main advantage of vaccinations is that it is given to healthy people to prevent them from getting ill. Vaccination over the years has helped eradicate diseases such as smallpox and virtually eliminated other diseases like polio. It is believed that prevention is better than cure. Vaccination helps to reduce the social and psychological toll of illnesses on people and lessens the burden on hospitals and the healthcare system. In summary, vaccine saves lives. It reduces psychological and financial burden on any society. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 caused severe emotional damage to families that lost their lives, that lost their loved ones, and many are still suffering from the aftermath of the pandemic. Since most parts of the world have been taking the vaccine, peace and order have been restored. Based on these concrete facts, it is clear that vaccines have a very positive impact on human lives. Thanks for watching.